Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
Well, hello and welcome again to the Unity Talks podcast. I'm your host, David Cathey, and we are here today with another executive in DFW to dive deep into the mind and career of one of my favorite people I've been a client, she's been a candidate, and she's a friend, and we're going to learn from her today, and her name is Amanda Johnson. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, we're so happy that you're here today. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of Amanda's really high-level rundown of her professional career. We're going to jump back into her childhood to see how her childhood prepared her with work ethic and perseverance that landed her in the position that she's in today. And just from a high-level career standpoint, we're talking to someone who CPA, has a degree, public accounting, one industry, education software is another industry, family office, real estate, life sciences. So she's had different stops in different industries that have helped shape who she is today, both personally and professionally. So Amanda, I gave you just a very rough introduction of your professional career, but let's talk about, how you got to where you decided, I want to be an accountant when you were a kid growing up.
Okay. Yes.
So family, kind of a large family here, right?
Large family, yes. I am one of six, so I have four sisters and one brother, right there in the middle. So yeah, very large family. Might be why I decided to only have two. But yeah, large family, lots going on all the time, never a dull moment, modest upbringing. Yeah. Definitely, I would say my upbringing is where I learned my work ethic and my perseverance. My dad was one of 9, and he was the only one to graduate high school out of his siblings. My mom was one of 4, and she actually did not graduate high school. But both of my parents, managed to always work hard, always provide for us. And they taught us the value of working hard and just a general theme of always be able to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Never put yourself in a position where you have to rely on someone else, whether that be a husband or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or your parents again or mm-hmm. Whatever. So that's kind of what led me to accounting. I think originally, as a small child, I probably thought, I love animals. I'll be a veterinarian. Mm-hmm. Because that sounds great, right? Yeah. If you love animals. But it turns out there's a fair amount of putting them down in that profession.
The sad part.
There's the sad part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I thought that not suit me too well.
Emotionally,
right.
I don't really want to do this. That's not the fun part. I just like to pet them and play with them.
Yes. Is there a job out there where I can just pet the animals? It turns out that's really not in demand. I think
doesn't pay a lot.
It probably doesn't. Yeah. Yes, it probably doesn't. So, so at some point in high school, I took an accounting class, and it kind of just clicked a little bit, and it kind of just made me realize this is a career path that I feel mm-hmm. like would be always in demand and just kind of be a stable choice, independent of economy fluctuations, and it just kind of sat with me as something that would be a reasonable choice.
Well, I feel like that too. I feel like whenever people ask that question, I always feel like I rattle off the same list every single time. It's like a teacher, an accountant, a nurse, someone in IT. Those are my 4 go-tos whenever I think stable, always going to be needed,
Yep.
always kind of in demand for the most part, can kind of live anywhere you want to live, no matter what city, big or small. There's going to be accountants, teachers, nurses,
Yep.
and IT professionals.
Right.
And
Exactly.
you mentioned yesterday when we were chatting, it just seemed so practical. At the time you were in high school and you said, it just seemed really practical to me that this was safe and something I was good at.
Right. Right. And of course, I had to consult with my counterpart, my twin.
Yes.
And it was a joint decision.
Yes.
As most things are in our twin life. So together we decided
We're going to be accountants too.
Yeah, let's
we're
do
gonna,
this thing.
We're going to go our undergrad. So those that don't know, Amanda has a twin, Angela. She also a CPA. You
Yes.
got your master's in accounting together at the
Yes.
same school,
Yes.
taking the same classes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I hate to put you on the spot here.
Go ahead and do it. I already told you.
GPA, CPA, who was better? I know you know.
I mean, she's very smart. She actually passed all 4 parts of the CPA exam on her first try, whereas I failed 1 part by 2 points. So she has that on me. So, but it was fun to do that together. We pushed each other. It was like we always had a cheerleader.
Yeah.
We had someone who was literally in each other's shoes going.
Yeah.
I know how this feels. You can do it. You can make it. Just keep going.
Yeah,
So,
it's good, healthy competition.
absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, you're cheering for each other, but you're also competing with each other.
Right.
But it's healthy.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
super healthy. It propelled you to where you were
Yeah.
then and where you are today.
Right.
Which
Yes.
I think that's great. Now, so you're graduating college, you both get a CPA. At that point in time, were you thinking, I'm going to be a CFO? Like, this is my destiny. This is what I'm going to do with my life. And I'm going to be a CFO at, 23 years old.
I don't think that I really thought that per se. I think if I had any thoughts about, this will be the future of my career, I think I had a brief notion of, me and my twin sister will open up a CPA firm, double-digit accounting. Is that not silly?
I would love that.
How silly
It
is that?
still may be in the cards.
David, let me be clear. It is not in the cards. No, sir. So we both did some time in public accounting, both in tax, actually. And I think that thought just went goodbye.
Yeah.
Just wasn't for me.
Yeah. Well,
Or the thought of like having my own CPA firm.
having your own CPA, or even just like, this is the pinnacle of being a CFO, and that's what I'm shooting for, and it's that or bust. It was really like, so what do you think about instead? What did you want instead when you graduated?
I think I just always, be able to make a living, support myself, again.
Which you learned from the family you grew up in.
Exactly, yes. Just the need to be independent and take care of myself was first and foremost. But other than that, it was more about wanting to learn and grow and just experience various facets in the accounting and finance world, not just tax,
Yeah.
or just fixed assets or just revenue or what have you,
Well, it's come in really handy, like in so many different areas, the learning and not just one scope. So you started out
Absolutely.
in tax accounting,
Yep.
and then you moved over to GL when you got into industry.
Yep.
And you've always been, you've had some large companies, but it's always seemed, and where you are now, you're made for a smaller company. And you've had a bunch of different industries and experiences.
Yep.
So what do you feel that having experience in all those industries, when you meld all of that together, how has that shaped you as a professional today?
Good question. Very good question. I'd say that, in a positive way, for sure. it helps me when I'm faced with new challenges to look back, and because it's like everything has been a new challenge. You know, there haven't been too many times where I'm just, humming along in my comfort zone. When I'm joining a new industry, it's all kind of new again, and it's a challenge. And so going through that time and again, it's all about a matter of perspective, and I think it again helps me cope with facing challenges. It doesn't seem so daunting.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Because
you've had success in the past.
Right.
You know you can deliver.
Right.
And it's relying on the success after the success. Even when you have that feeling of, oh my gosh, I don't even know the language that they're talking right now. This is totally foreign to me.
Which I've literally been in that situation numerous times.
But you've done it before.
Exactly.
And you look back, and that's a vote of confidence, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I feel like that would be a vote of confidence. I also feel like it's allowed you to see so many different things from a smaller company perspective that, a lot of people don't know this, but when you're at a controller or a CFO of a smaller company, you're not just closing the books each month and making journal entries each month. You see a wide variety of activity.
So many different things. That's what's exciting.
Yeah.
That's why I think I am more suited toward the smaller environment, because it's just so much more diverse. From you get to see benefits and payroll and HR and sales tax and federal tax and payroll tax and audit. You just see such a variety, budgeting, forecast, all of it.
You even see things that are non-back office finance and accounting related functions.
Right.
I feel like a leader at a smaller company oftentimes gets the phone call when no one else knows what to do, and something's happening. They're like, I don't know, call Amanda, just tell her about it and see what happens.
Right, yes.
And it's not, maybe it's IT, or someone's knocking at the door and they don't know what to do with this person, and it's like, I don't know, go get the controller.
Right, yes.
And
and then that opens up a can of worms, and you learn something new. Yeah.
So you really have to go into an office in the morning, and you may have a plan, and then in a heartbeat, your day is shifted.
Right.
And you're completely chasing something else.
Right.
Is that something that you like? Is that?
Yeah, so for the most part, yes, because it just keeps it interesting. We all find some comfort in our day-to-day tasks that are the easy, mindless type activities, but that gets old. It's the unexpected, or the random fire drill of the day that it just keeps things interesting.
Yeah. When you can, and it's acceptable if it's not confidential information, the people that work for you, do you like to, even the things that aren't in their line of business and their scope of duties, and they don't have a pressing deadline, do you like to bring them into those things to show them the broader picture of what happens at that level?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I've been doing that with the assistant controller who works for me right now, and trying to bring her in. I'm always mindful of her time, though. I always, check with her and make sure, hey, if you're too swamped. Of course, generally I know what she's working on, but I'm mindful of her time. But yeah, you always have to judge, like, the people that work for you to see if they're the kind of person who wants that, right? And she definitely is. So she's a rock star. Love her. But yeah, I do, and because I know that is how you learn and grow.
And typically, those people that want that exposure, like, you want them to bring them in closer into the business. It kind of creates that sticky culture. Like I work for someone who shows me so many different things that aren't really even accounting functions, which is really cool. And it creates that sticky culture where it's actually harder for them to consider leaving if they're being tempted to leave to go somewhere else.
Yes.
And I think that's so cool, giving them that opportunity. Those are also the people that you want to be able to promote up. And that's okay if someone doesn't want that. Would you agree? Like, I don't really want that. And so
absolutely.
they want to just do what they're doing.
Yes. And that is absolutely, completely okay.
Yeah.
No one should ever feel bad about that. Yeah.
Well, you've worked for, so interestingly, Amanda has worked with and for 3 of our other guests on the Unity Talks podcast in the past. And you'd consider them, I don't know if it was formally discussed, but it's like, oh yeah, all 3 of them could be mentors.
Right.
Especially one in particular.
Christina, yes.
Yeah. Christina Bailey, she was on the first episode of the Unity Talks podcast, who's the CFO of MTX Group.
Yep, she's
Hi,
amazing.
Christina, if you're listening.
Christina. Yep.
When you look at someone and you're working for them or they're in a different department, are you looking at them and from a distance as observation of, man, I love the way they handle themselves? Are you actively engaging them in discussions to pick their brain? Is it a little of both so that you can learn to be a better leader in your own career?
I would say probably there's a lot of observation that goes on that I think is just innate in the work environment, and particularly with the leaders of your own department. You have more exposure to those folks, and so to observe how they handle stressful situations, how they, time management even, something as seemingly simple as that. There's definitely a fair amount of observing how they react to certain business situations that they're in, and then also just time, time in the saddle, watching situations unfold in a business, in the life cycle of businesses and various things that you're exposed to, and watching other leaders in the company. And sometimes it's a matter of seeing things that you tell yourself, I think I'll mark that one down as something not to do.
Yeah.
I think that can be just as important,
Absolutely.
But luckily I've had lots of great mentors. Christina, Scott Moore, most recently Britt Brown. You should invite him on the show. So I've had some great people to learn from, and whether they have realized that they're mentors to me or not, I don't know. But you can be you might be a mentor to someone and not even know that you are.
Yeah. Actions speak, and someone's always watching how you're holding yourself in a professional environment. And so it's always important when you reach a certain level, maybe even any level, right? I guess it's kind of any level. You come out of school, and it's important to be mindful of how you're behaving because you have other leaders watching you. I'm glad I caught myself there, because it's not just for leaders to watch that. It's for everybody in an organization. And how they behave.
Yes.
Do you find yourself today pulling on specific behavioral examples from the past and discussing it with your assistant controller today, that maybe it was something when you were at your life sciences company where you observed something and it's like, oh, I've been in a similar situation, and you draw that as a resource on how to handle in today's job?
Yeah. I wish I could think of a specific example, but I know I do. Yeah. I mean, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. I find myself doing that all the time. Like I'll be talking to the team and I'm like, so-and-so told me this one time, or I'll never forget, this situation, and it's 15 years ago.
Right.
But at the right moment, it just comes to me.
Right.
And I'm so thankful of just having that awareness
Yeah.
and the ability to observe people better at the job than I am.
There are probably not many of those, David.
No, there are definitely those. I've got a lot of them, but it's super important
Yep.
to do that.
It is. It really is.
So tell us a little bit about the path that you've taken. So you're in the CFO role now. You were promoted internally, and you've spent in your career 10 plus years in 3 different family office-ish type environments. One was probably a little bit heavier real estate, but you had a toe in the water of family office for about 4.5 years while you were there.
Right.
It's so, for those that don't know and might be listening to this, family offices is basic. Well, you describe what a family office is. I don't know why I'm doing it. You're the pro.
Yeah. It's, instead of dealing with a corporation's finances, think of that for an individual or a family, a group of obviously wealthy individuals who are successful. And, those folks are interesting to learn from. The successful people, extremely successful and wealthy people are not cut of the same cloth as your average everyday person, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Or we would all be walking around, super wealthy and successful.
They're the 5%ers,
Exactly. Yes.
And they're cut from a different cloth. Yesterday you said they just have this different DNA.
Right.
And
yes.
you've seen many of them in your career.
Right. Yes.
It's fascinating to me.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's fascinating to me as well.
What is the separator? Like what is the difference?
It's I think a lot of it really is their DNA, how it's just in them. But I think regardless of whether or not it's in your DNA, you can, learn from things that they do to, help yourself be more successful. Obviously, maybe not to their level, but, there are things that you can learn about negotiation and, again, time management and just juggling a million things, and just how they react in certain situations. There's definitely a lot to learn from super successful, and sometimes those are the people that get the bad rap. We all hear about them. The horror stories about the super wealthy people, but I've been lucky enough to work for some very, very kind.
I was gonna say the people that you've worked for. That's the other thing is the people that you've worked for. Yeah, they're wealthy and maybe not every deal goes great, but what's more important than both of those two things, whether a deal goes good or whether or not they're wealthy, is they're good people.
Good people, right? That's what's most important.
It's kind of heartwarming and refreshing to know that people that are out there that so many people look up to are also just good human beings, right? Their intentions
can exist.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
But they're always. I think it would be so fascinating to think about, like when you said you can learn things from them and apply it to yourself. So I would say I'm probably more of a risk averse person. I was an old finance person before I got into this, and maybe I'm a little bit more risk averse. And if I were working in one of those organizations, I would see their willingness to accept a risk based on how a deal is structured. And even though I might not be able to do that because it takes some capital to do that, and I don't have that, but it would make me more willing perhaps in my personal life, or say, you know what, I can come back from this. If it doesn't work out, I can come back from this.
There's definitely a common theme that I've noticed in the various family offices that I've worked for, to your point, a higher tolerance for risk, and also just this attitude of, just get things done, just don't give up. There's a way, you will find a way. And yeah, like you said, not every deal goes great, but it's not letting yourself get hung up on the things that don't go great, but moving forward and continuing to find new ones that do go well.
Right.
You know,
Right.
not letting the failures keep you down.
Well, that's a little bit of the perseverance that we talked about. So whether you are a wealthy individual, right, and you have to persevere, it's just shaped a little bit differently.
Right.
We talked about your perseverance of how that's led you to where you are.
Right.
And I'm sure that you still draw on that today because you went from growing quickly in your career, and you still are, and then now you've got 2 little kiddos
Yep.
at the house.
I also have 2 stepsons too. I don't want to forget about them. They're
This
great.
is true. This is true. And so you've had to make that shift, right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure that's brought through times where you've had to persevere through some issues, whether it's personally or professionally, or how your personal life impacts your professional life.
Right. Right.
What do you draw on for that? Like, how do you draw on the childhood that you can? Do you feel like that has an impact and it's led you to where you are today on knowing that you can persevere?
That, and just, I guess, just as I've experienced certain things in my career and I've made it through them, looking back on those times, and there's one time in particular that I'm thinking of, when I was the controller at Holdings for Commercial, and this was around the time that I met you, David.
Okay.
I was pregnant, and I
Yeah.
was like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm going to need someone because I'm going to be going on maternity leave.
Yes.
And you brought me Angie. Oh, love Angie. So I ended up going to a doctor's visit, typical pregnancy doctor's visit, and got told I needed to go to the hospital right then and there, got put on bed rest, and I was new in my role as a controller. It was difficult. It was very difficult. But with all these questions going on about, was my baby going to be okay? I don't want to let the company down. I know they're really counting on me. But I had a great boss, Scott Moore, who I know you know him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the 2 of us worked together, and there was a lot of conference calls from home and working on budgets and, just working through some pretty difficult things during a very challenging time personally. But I made it through, and to this day, me and Scott Moore look back on that and laugh like, can you believe we made it through that? We can make it through anything. I really do actually think back on that experience and go, and just remember how it seemed so unsurvivable, but I actually did survive, and I think I thrived, actually.
Yeah.
Well,
Scott's such a great guy too. I mean, he's just fantastic, and
he is.
I think that's the thing. Like, you're trying to work from home, and you're persevering through a trying time mentally, emotionally, physically for you.
Yep.
And I really think it's important that our listeners, whether they are just beginning in their career or they're mid-year in their career, mid-tier in their career, or they're at the top, I mean, I really think it's important for people to, at the time when you go through those things, it's super challenging and you think there's no way out, and you feel like the walls are closing in on you. And it's important not to just sweep those under the rug and never think about them again, because you can use that as a resource to help you.
Oh, 100%. I draw on that all the time. Just remember, you made it through that. You can make it through anything. Yeah.
I know I have mine. In fact, my team at Unity Search, a lot of them know mine.
Can you tell me yours?
I mean, it's just different things. My wife and I were super young. We were 19 years old. We were freshmen in college. We got pregnant. We weren't married at the time. We went to a Christian university, and you'd think that people would surround you. Instead, you wear a scarlet letter, and no one wants anything to do with you. And you're trying to scrape 2 nickels together just to survive on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and red beans and rice for years.
Yeah.
And I always think back, like, if I can make it through that, I'm not going to let this isn't going to take me down. And then I just keep replacing what the new this is.
Yeah.
And I've used that for so much in my personal and professional life.
Yeah.
And you refuse to, it's crazy. The perseverance and work ethic, they go hand in hand.
They really do.
Because it's like, I'm going to persevere. You have that right mindset, and we're all going to face it. Whether you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth or not, you're going to face trying times.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you decide I'm going to persevere, that's when the work ethic kicks in.
Yep.
And it's not the only time the work ethic kicks in. The work ethic is all throughout there, but really once you make that decision, it's like it clicks, and you are going to survive and thrive.
Yep.
And use your work ethic to get you through.
Absolutely.
And I think I love that you started, Amanda, I love that you started your life really, one of 6, your dad was one of 9, and you've made the career and the family that you've had, and you keep drawing on those resources and those mentors.
Yep.
And I love that story for people to hear, because someone listening today has that same story. A little bit different, but they have that same story, and they're going to look at you and they're going to say, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's
believe me, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
That's a great thing, right? Like some people could say, wait a minute, David, if she can do it, like give me some credit. I am giving you credit. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, so as we wrap up today, so I'd love for you to give our listeners, okay? So our listeners, they could be other leaders in organizations or people like you when you were graduating along with Angie with your CPA and being competitive to see who's going to pass the test first. And they're launching into their career. What are the 1-2 pieces of advice that you would impart on them?
Definitely, as we've talked about, the work ethic and the perseverance, that is key. But another thing that I think is important to keep in mind, which is important to me, is always learn. Just never ever stop learning. If you're not learning, you're dying. I think as long as you stay focused on never being stagnant and just always just be hungry to learn. Yeah. That's key. I mean, there's so much out there, so much to learn.
So how do you learn? What do you do?
So surrounding yourself with people that that know things that you don't know, and I think it's important to have those people that are not stingy with their knowledge, because we all know those people. But luckily, I've had some really good folks in my life that are willing to share their knowledge, and that's huge. Also, just online reading, taking even the silly 40 hours of CPE that I have to do every year. I'll be darned if every time I'm at some point during these CP hours I'm going, well, that actually was interesting. I'm glad I did that. You know? So I think it's key. It's huge to always learn. Always.
Yeah, I love that. So last week or 2 weeks ago, we had Stacey Murray sitting in that seat, and kind of the same thing that you led off with, like surround yourself with people. And she said, network. She's like, you may not want to go to this event. Go to the event. Surround yourself with those people. Like I think about that term that, those 2 terminologies or those 2 sayings that people say. They're like, if you want to increase your net worth, increase your network.
Yes, I like that.
There's the other one of, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. And so elevate who you surround yourself with. Those are one and the same. And typically you get to learn from those people, right? You're learning from them every day in the office that you're working in.
Absolutely.
And you've done it throughout your career. And I love that. That's a great work ethic, perseverance, and then always continue to learn, whether it's even CPE, where people are like, you have to have toothpicks in your eyes to stay awake through some of it.
Yeah. You can always find something interesting, and
an MBA in your car by listening to Audible or a podcast or reading a book, old school, which I've been working at getting better at. Not a very good reader.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I work at it pretty hard. So anyways, Amanda, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes.
I hope you had as much fun as we did.
I did. Thank you so
Great.
much, David.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Unity Talks podcast, where we meet with leaders across DFW who are great at their career and how they got there and how they maintain. And as we heard from Amanda just now, it's about continuing to learn throughout her entire career. And until next time, we'll see you down the road.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.